almost everybody can relate to feeling underestimated at some point in their life. You have to live with consequences and with the relationships that you forge. Money attracts money. But what if you don't have money? You become money. I became money by learning as much as I possibly could. 30 million in, that first 50,000 means the world to me.
First of all, I just want to say thank you all so much for taking the time for being here this evening, especially on a Wednesday evening. I know it's crazy to get out here downtown. I'm Justin from Blanchett. I'm one of the founders of Breaking Bread, which is the business behind sports media and tech, alongside of my brothers here, Austin and Kenny. Raise it up, raise it up. Appreciate that, whoever that was in the back. Thank you. My background is in strategy investments across sports media and tech. Austin is investments and strategy. He's a day-by-day management consultant in the sports media and tech space. And my guy Kenny Wilson here has been a talent manager for some time. You actually might see some of his players on Sundays in the coming years. But as you can tell, we're really passionate about this space. But what we're most passionate about is the business of hope and really highlighting underrepresented founders who are breaking that proverbial glass ceiling. I remember telling this to my coach that I hope for Breaking Bread is to redefine success in the Black and brown communities, and in which he interjected and said, you guys are defining it. And I hope that we continue to do that with this conversation tonight. Thank you so much, Arlan, for taking the time for being here this evening. Give it up.
Thank you.
If you guys don't follow her on Instagram, you definitely should. Arlan was here. She's been on a tour. We were talking about this before the event. She's been with Angela Yee, our brothers from Earn Your Leisure and such. So thank you so much for taking the time. She'll be on tour for the next few weeks as well, talking about her incredible book, Your First Million. I'll jump in quickly just to give a quick background on her, but I'm sure you all probably know this, so I apologize. But you gotta amp her up while she's here. Arlan is the founder of Backstage Capital, founded back in 2015 to invest in founders of color, women, and or LGBTQ. Backstage raised $30 million and invested in 200 companies, led by underestimated founders, as well as investing as an LP in 27 funds. In 2020, she dropped the equivalent of Jay-Z's Blueprint 1. We're gonna call it About Damn Time. Yeah. Give it up. And of course, listening to her fans, she dropped Blueprint 2, which is Your First Million. Recently, and obviously this is part of our book tour. So Arlan, again, thank you so much for taking the time. I'll give it up to my guys, Austin and Kenny, to take it from here.
Thank you.
So Arlan, we've only got 45 minutes to an hour, which we know is not enough time to encapsulate everything that you've done and you've accomplished. But with that time, what are the main two things that you hope we leave with that you're gonna give us?
The main two things that I hope people leave with?
Yes.
Yes. One is that if you're not already, that you can and should and will become a millionaire. That's one.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And the second is what I normally end with, but I'll start here so we can come back to it, which is be yourself so the people looking for you can find you.
So I'll start off with a little bit more of a softball. You obviously know a couple things about music. You're a massive music buff, from Norwegian pop punk bands to CeeLo Green to Janet Jackson. I gotta know, what's your Spotify Wrap from 2023? Who were your top 5 artists?
Ooh, so getting older. It's a little different. It's kind of Spotify, what? Nap? Spotify Nap is what it's really. I'll tell you who I love, and actually, we haven't announced this yet, but so I have an event coming up April 9th through the 12th at LA Live at Peacock Theater, and a lot of people are going to be there. I'm hoping we're going to talk about it. One of the musicians the musician that's going to close us out is TLC. Okay.
Wow.
So, who's going to open for TLC? So, an end our conference is a friend of mine I've known for, I want to say 9 years now, going on 9 years. Her name is Janine. She's a musician. Anybody know Janine? Yeah, you do? Okay, so I've known
We know
Janine
her.
for a while. I used to be her tour manager. We haven't announced it yet, but she's going to do a 30-minute set at the Peacock Theater. If you have not heard her music, she's from New Zealand. She's actually there right now getting ready to kick off a world tour. I used to be her tour manager, and now I'm her interim manager, actually. You can find her on Instagram at just the name Janine, Janine. And she just has an amazing music that puts you all in your feels. And so I have a lot of her and playing just because it's like evergreen. Just a lot. I mean, I kind of go back, old school. Not old school, I guess it's old school now, but I listen to a lot of Janet. You'll see in the introduction of this book, if you get to read it, why. But yeah, just anything. I was listening to Rascal Flatts yesterday.
Okay.
Life is a Highway is a banger.
Yeah, life is a highway. No, but they have some interesting music, and yeah, I'm not cool at all. So I know you know that.
Not true at all. That's pretty dope, though. Like, full circle for you,
Yeah.
working with Janine as her tour manager,
I know,
and now
right?
she's performing at your
Now
event.
she's going to perform on the largest stage, like physical largest stage in Southern California, because the Peacock Theater is where the Emmys were held. And it's a huge stage, and so she's going on her world tour, which is really cool.
So you're kind of a big deal. So just to follow up and continue on music, so Janet Jackson has played such a pivotal role in your life and being your North Star. Talk to us about this relationship with you and Janet. I know it's a little bit in the book, but then also the quote of "let someone shorter than you stand in front of you" and what that means to
Yeah,
you.
so you know Janet Jackson, right? Yeah. So we're not buddies. We're not like hanging out or anything, but I do know her and she knows me. When I was 13 years old, I was like obsessed with Janet, loved Janet, and I couldn't afford a ticket, so or my mom couldn't. But she surprised me with the ticket, and she sat outside. This was before we had phones and all kinds of stuff, right? It's '94. She sat outside while I went to my first concert ever to my favorite artist. And she put hoop earrings on me and some lipstick so I would look a little older. And she told me not to talk to anybody. And it was a whole thing. So I get there, and I start talking to these teenagers who are a little bit older than I am. And if anybody from Dallas, Fort Worth area, like nobody, not a single person. One
Dallas?
person, yes. So I was from Dallas, they were from Fort Worth, so they were very exotic to me. And we started talking real like hype, and this guy comes up to us, and this is the faster version, but he comes up to us, and he says, "You look like big fans." And we're like, "Of course we are, dude." You're like, "Who are you?" And he said, "How would you like to see the show front row?" And I was like, "Hold on, guys. My mom told me about people like this guy." "We shan't be going anywhere with you, sir." And he like smiled. I can still see his face. He like smiled and he kind of said, he's like, "Well, how about this? You keep your tickets and just walk with me to the front row. And if I'm lying, then you have your tickets, no problem." And I was like, "I'll allow it. Sounds logical." So we get up, we go, we keep walking, and nobody stops us. And we get to the front row, and they just let us in. And it turns out that was Renee Elizondo, her former husband. And I didn't know him from Adam because I was 13. And Janet Janet just likes to see the front row with good energy, so she could have that energy. So she puts people there. And so I watched my first concert in the front row, and it was Janet Jackson in front of, I want to say 15,000 people from all races, genders, orientations, singing every single word to this black woman on stage. And it just changed everything for me that night, like really changed a lot, changed my life. And fast forward 30 years from then, I mean, a lot happened in between, but I found out she was doing an auction in Beverly Hills a couple years ago.
Yep.
And I had my eye on this truck that not only was her prized truck, but came with a 10-minute phone call for her to tell the person what it meant to her. That had to be under NDA. It was the only item in 1,300 or 1,400 items that came with that phone call. So I went and bid on it. And Kim Kardashian and Christina Aguilera were bidding by phone. The representatives were bidding by phone. So I knew I was not getting this truck. And then, through a series of events, I got the truck.
Okay.
So now I own the truck. And she's doing a documentary, and I know there's footage of me just losing my mind. And that's not gonna be a fun day when I see that. But I was so overcome with emotion, not just because it was Janet, but because I was like, I was sleeping on the floor of an airport just a few years ago. How did I get here? You know, and I just like all the emotion came out. Unfortunately, on camera, her cameras rushed out. But then I had the call with her, and that's really when you said the relationship. That kind of was when it started. So she told me the meaning of the truck or why it was important to her. We had a really great conversation, and then she invited me backstage at a stadium show about a year later, so in Cincinnati. So I walked in, had my mom, my brother, and my brother's fiance, Angel, and she's like, "How's the truck?" So yeah, I'll give you just one thing to take from that. As soon as I won it, and it was $114,000 after the fees, okay? As soon as I won it, I told her that on that phone call that if she wanted to keep it, I would gift it back to her. And she said, she lives in London, so she said it wouldn't really work out, but she was so it was just took her by surprise that somebody would do that. And so you kind of want to find these moments to surprise and delight and think about the bigger picture, right, of what that kind of sentiment, and I meant it, but the sentiment even of it meant. It's like, the next time she had an opportunity, she brought us backstage, and she kind of just, we're now in her orbit.
Nice. Yeah, I want to go into young Arlan. And, you talk about in your book that your family didn't quite always have money, or sometimes being an outcast as a kid, on the playground. But you seem to kind of have this quiet confidence about you that kind of led to your journey of starting Backstage Capital. Was there a moment or a thing that kind of gave you that confidence, or is that kind of more innate kind of within you?
I don't think there was a moment. My mom tells the story of me being 4 or 5 years old, and we're in like a Dillard's or like a Macy's or something in Texas, and she's looking for a belt, but she can't find it, and she's always been kind of shy, and I just go around the store like, "Where's the manager? We need a belt," So I don't remember a time where I thought, "Oh, I shouldn't speak up," or "Ooh, I shouldn't say that," because it's just always been like, I'm human, they're human, nobody's better than anybody else. Even like at 5, 6, 7 years old, I was having these thoughts to myself on the playground. So no, I don't think there was any main thing. But I guess, I was surrounded by black women growing up. That's a big part of it. Just sort of like, there is a certain, like you fill up space.
Yeah, certain magic.
Yeah.
I'm going to start getting into VC a little bit. So, correct me, 2014, you're homeless, you're at SFO Airport, and you have this idea that you want to go into venture capital. Reading your book, 1/5 of 1% of VC funding goes to black women.
Yeah.
So why would you want to do this of all careers, knowing the obstacles?
Don't all homeless people want to start a venture fund? It was 2015 when I was at the airport, and I started working on Backstage 2012, 2013.
Okay.
And honestly, I was working. I've had ups and downs. It wasn't like all whatever. But I was working on the road with a couple of musicians, including Tony Braxton. That was really fun, as a production coordinator. And I had always been in the lab of one way or another. I was selling T-shirts. I did drop shipping like 20 years ago. I was doing all kinds of stuff, like all the stuff that people do as a side hustle now. It's like I tried all of that. I just never make it work. It never made enough money, and I was always trying to catch up. And then it was, I was 30, 31, and I saw Troy Carter, who used to be Lady Gaga's manager, is a black man, Troy, and then Ashton Kutcher, Ellen DeGeneres, Justin Bieber. I saw these people making investments in a place called Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. And I was just so curious. Even on the road, they would be, like, the managers would fly in from New York and sit down with the artists, whoever I was with, and they would have these meetings about startups. And I'm like, they're going to underestimate me here, right? Like, underestimated is a word that I have trademarked in the US and UK under finance. we use that now, but I was thinking about it back then, right? So I was like, they're probably underestimating me. I'm just gonna kind of hang around and, run around, do whatever they need, but I'm listening. And I said, I'm gonna follow that trail of money. Why are they so interested in this? And these people are wealthy. So I started learning more and more, and then I realized, oh, this is a group that I have belonged to my whole life, but I just didn't realize what it was called or what it was. Entrepreneur, oh, this is me. And I originally thought it was gonna be like a meritocracy. I was gonna like, oh, cool, okay, so like Silicon Valley, they really love when people are like have gumption and ingenuity and
hustle.
Hustle. Like, I mean, I embody that. Let's go. And then I learned some other stuff.
Not quite like that.
Some other stark realities, both directly and through getting to know several founders. Yeah. And that's when I said, well, I'm not gonna try to necessarily raise money for a company anymore. I'm going to take that same amount, that $1 million that I was trying to raise, I'm going to try to raise that for a fund and then invest in the other, as it were.
Yeah. You mentioned the word underestimated. I think I want to highlight that because I've used, I'm sure others have used the word underrepresented. What is your kind of definition of underestimated, and why is that, more of a better word for instead of underrepresented?
Yeah, I mean, underrepresented is accurate too, but underestimated for both groups, for people who are talking to, like allies, I guess you could call them, it changes the tone. Like, I'll give you an example. I speak a lot at a lot of events, and they used to really just introduce me as like, Arlan Hamilton is in the DEI space, and you would see half the group, the audience, just stand up and walk out. Like, oh, I got to get lunch, and it's like 6 a.m. And it was just like, oh, this is now the part where we get lectured and we get yelled at, and it's also boring to me. So I'm gonna hang a left, right? And I realized when I was sort of gifted this word during a founder meeting that we had, this underestimated. I realized when I started using that word in meetings and in emails and even on stage, that there was a leaning in from these guys who had
a connotation to it.
There was a thing of like, what am I missing out on? You're underestimated. What are we going on? So for that group, and then for us, there's something that you get a little bit more emboldened and a little bit more encouraged of like, yeah, they're just not seeing it yet.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel. And another thing is, like, almost everybody can relate to feeling underestimated at some point in their life. So a lot of things that I do as an investor or teacher, whatever it is, it has a lot to do with branding and a lot to do with marketing. And having these words that are associated with me and with Backstage Capital are part of that. Just like I would encourage any founder to do. Like, you know how they say that when you have does everybody know that if you name your customer, like, it's some sort of chance, much higher chance that you'll create a community, right? If you don't have a name, how many people have a name for their customer? Like, let me see, anybody? Like, couple, like, yeah. So listen, who's an entrepreneur? Okay, so listen, when you go home tonight, or even now, start thinking about it, but pay attention, yeah. Start thinking of a name for your customer, the group. And sometimes the customers are the ones who come up with it. So I had a retreat in Laguna, I had a retreat in Laguna over the weekend.
Living good, right?
That I hosted with 16 black women who are entrepreneurs, doctors, all the things. And it was very transformative for many of them, including me. It was a really wonderful time. And we had dinner the second night, and one of the tables called me over, and they said, you know what, they didn't know each other before, but they got to know each other, and they're like, we all have our name, we have a name for this group in our phone, and that's where we're doing the group chat. And they call themselves the Arlanaires. And I'm like, that, because I've been looking for a name like that. And with Backstage, we have the Backstage Catalyst. We have 2 catalysts here. Yeah, they're in our apprenticeship program. Yes. catalysts. And then, you know, when I had a course, investing as a catalyst, they have venture catalyst shirts, right? When you do that, you kind of, you change the game for your company, because then you have a purpose for them. No matter what you're selling, CPG product, digital product, service, SaaS, give your customer a name.
Nice. So you kind of talked about it in terms of connotation of underestimated versus underrepresented. Working in venture capital and you working with a lot of underrepresented individuals, how did you kind of push back against you being the Robin Hood of like stealing from the rich, giving to these poor companies, and your expectations for anybody that you invest in?
Yeah, I got that a lot. I didn't really mind it because it was like, as long as they weren't calling me, you know, what a lot of trolls call me, which is some version of, oh, I won't say it, but apparently I'm a little heavier than they'd like me to be, and they're looking out for my health, I think. And I'm also a female dog for some reason. They've never met me, you know, all that. But Robin Hood wasn't too bad of a thing. But listen, we see thousands of companies a year. Thousands. I'm also pitched every second of every day of my life. Like, I had to change my DoorDash and Uber name because when I would get in a car and they would start pitching me. So we see so many companies, but we only invest in less than 1%. So it's just by nature. It's not like, oh, you're black, let me write you let me get my coin purse and my clutch and let me write you a check. It doesn't work that way, right?
We wish.
Yeah. So it's not like that. It's competitive. And then Mark Cuban is is our largest LP. He invested $6 million of the 30, and he doesn't play, y'all. I don't know if anybody has met him or talked to him. He does not play. He's not here for like a Make-A-Wish Foundation type of thing. I'm sure he does that on his own free time, but not with like entrepreneurship. He does not play. He wants us to make money for him. And you can't make money for him and for other LPs, which is my job, if you're not looking at it with a critical lens. And I know that the most of the entrepreneurs in our portfolio and outside of our portfolio understand that we have to hold ourselves to a certain standard. It's a detriment to them if we don't. That's the end of the day. So that was the conversation. I think some of our investors, our LPs, limited partners, some of them I think invested because they were like, this makes my heart feel good. I feel good about myself because I'm investing in these black folks. And I'm like, all right, just go ahead. This is the wire information. And, you know, I would much rather that than someone who is actively working against me.
Like approve it.
Yeah,
investment.
and so I talk to them about it, but I can't change their hearts, right? I can just tell them this is not a charity. If I wanted to have a charity, I would have started a charity. This is something different.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to talk about bringing your authentic self to work. You know, we all have some sort of job or work that we do every day. And I know in your book you talk about having a meeting with a potential investor who happened to be a black woman. And, you know, you kind of showed up, you have your, you know, how you bring your full self to work. And, you know, the meeting's supposed to go pretty fruitfully, but it ended up being more of a conversation of how you're supposed to dress in VC or how you're supposed to dress as like investor. So I'm curious your thoughts on like bring your full self to work, code switching, you know, all of us who, you know, may be the only or maybe underrepresented, you know, we have gotten situations where people may have said you need to dress like this or wear your hair like that. How have you navigated that, and how have you brought your full authentic self to the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to working for somebody else, I am highly unemployable. Highly. I mean, in the depths of being broke, fired after 2.5 days from a porn company. Not doing porn.
Key part.
That would be a story. That would be a story. No, like, in case you're curious, I was back in the day when they had DVDs. Are there any children in here? They had DVDs, and there was a company up the road where I was staying, and I was sleeping on somebody's floor. And they just need somebody who could type fast, watch the porn, and then describe it. $12.50 an hour. I was like, let go. Like I was like, so I did that, but I ended up. I know I'm going on a tangent, but I have to finish the story because I don't want y'all to make up the ending, So I learned. Okay, so and there was a lot of young people in there, like 18-year-olds there. It was weird, and I was like, okay, cool. So you watch it and then you give it a category. Don't ask.
We got AI nowadays, so I think we good.
I would be taken out for AI. So I do it, but I'm like I do what you're supposed to do in like 8 hours in like 3 hours because I can type fast and I watch porn fast apparently. So after sitting there for like a long time, I'm like, I'm not gonna charge them for me to be sitting here, and I want to go home, right? Because I got to walk home like a really far way. So I just get up and leave on the second day. I come in on the third day, they let me work till noon, and then they have Buster or Skeeter or whatever, whoever the guy who was in charge has me come into his office, and it's like I heard you left early yesterday, and I was like, I put my feet up, and I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I did. And he's like, yeah, that's a problem. You can't do that. And he's like, and he was just going off on me, and I was just like, and you have to remember, broke, okay? Don't know where I'm gonna live. I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. Like, I don't respect you, and I don't think that's fair to you. And so I had him, he was like, no. So I had him cut me a check, and I walked out. Anyway, it bought me a lot of pot pies, and I have a story for a lifetime. What was the question? You said code switching and being your authentic self. Okay. Well, so the point of that, not really that, but the point of like not being employable is that I personally say, if you're not feeling comfortable, if you're not feeling like you can show up as yourself, go somewhere else. But I also know it's not as simple as that, right? I know that it's just not as simple as that. But I just refuse to spend any waking moment not being appreciated by people that I'm actually working actively to help, and not being in an environment, like I can't be in an environment where only part of me is okay with you. That doesn't, I don't know how to do that. So I think even though it can't happen overnight, I think if you're in a position right now, in a situation right now where you're like, I have to be fake at work, or they don't appreciate me a certain way, just start your exit plan. That's all I'm saying. Just start the plan. It doesn't have to be tomorrow, but figure out, is it entrepreneurship? Is it finding other work? Is it finding people who are more aligned? But you're worth more than that. You're more valuable than staying in a situation like that. And that goes for love life too, by the way.
Thank you.
I know I just broke up a couple people here, and I am sorry for that, but I'm glad I said it. And
all right, we're gonna pull back from corn a little bit.
yeah.
But in terms of Mark Cuban, knowing that you're from Dallas, and then I know you were at All-Star Game a couple weeks ago, being a huge basketball fan, what did that mean, getting that investment from him? And was that your most meaningful investment from an investor?
It meant a lot to get invested in by Mark, and it's funny because I'm a big Mavericks fan, but I wasn't always like a big sports fan. In fact, I kind of tweeted about what's this thing with sports and I'm sports scene and all that. But I interviewed Mark after he invested in me on my podcast, and I didn't know who Luka was. So now I'm like, you can't get me away from these games because I love it. I understand it now. But Mark, I just grew up in Dallas, so I've known him, known of him for 20 years, and I used to watch Shark Tank. Even when we were at that hotel, I was sharing with my mom that room, and it would be a Friday night, and I would just sit on the edge of my bed and just like watch it and answer like I was a judge, and so it meant so much to me. You know what it meant the most to me is how he did it. He invested $1 million, even though he doesn't like to invest in other people's funds because he likes to invest directly in companies. But he invested first $1 million in 2019 because I had bad press. I had an article come out that said that I had failed.
The Axios?
Yes, Axios. That I'd failed to raise my fund because I hadn't raised it yet, which is like saying you're flying from LA to New York and the flight failed because you hadn't gotten there yet. To me, that's how I felt. And it was tinged with bias, and I wasn't the only one who believed that. And he just wrote to me the same day, and he reached out and he said, I'm going to give you $1 million. So he said, what you need to do is we need to get you independently wealthy so you have to deal with this BS, right? And so for him to do that in the way that we've worked together, and then to come back in 2020 and give 5 more and not ask for press, he could care less if I did press, honestly. We did for like a year. Nobody knew outside of Backstage. So that to me was like the way that he treats it, even though he's very straightforward, he's kind of brash. The way that he treats like the relationship, I think, is very respectful. It wasn't necessarily the most, what'd you say, important or
most meaningful? Yep.
It was very meaningful, and I appreciate him, and I always appreciate him. But I think there have been 2 others that have been more meaningful to me, and you can't, it's hard to measure that. But the very first investor, Susan Kimberlin, $50,000 while I was homeless.
How did that happen?
That was one, and then the other is Holly Laveau, who has just backed us, incredibly impactful. So I was now living at the airport in San Francisco. I left Texas to go towards Silicon Valley. I met Susan at a 2-week boot camp at Stanford that I got myself into through crowdfunding, through like negotiating the cost, all kinds of scholarships, all kinds of stuff. It was still super expensive. But I met her there, and she had a lot of money, but she didn't know a lot about angel investing. And I had been studying for years. So I say, we all know that money attracts money, right? It does, if you don't know. It attracts money, it really does. But what if you don't have money? You become money. That's what I did. I became money by learning as much as I possibly could. So when I met Susan and I realized, there are a few things I could teach her because I'd just been studying for so long without money, but as if I had it. She needed that information, I needed that backing, and then we were able to work together. And it took a few weeks, and she did not know that I was homeless, but she put the first $25K for me to set up shop, and then the first $25K for me to invest in somebody. And I'll never forget that. Like $30 million in, that first $50,000 means the world to me.
I'm curious, if someone in this room wanted to start a VC fund of their own, or with a partner, or with a group, what is the best pathway to do that, you think? Is it working at a fund as an associate? Is it still like their own syndicate? Is it just angel investing? Or is it just becoming really scrappy, just getting to know as much as you can about the market and then just putting yourself out there? What would you say the best pathway is?
There are many pathways. There's not any right answer, but I would say be really clear about why you want to start a fund. It sounds cool. It sounds even sexy sometimes because you're talking about all this money and kind of how the math works. It can be lucrative even if you're not good at it because you can make money from management fees. But it is so difficult to raise unless you're independently wealthy or you have a really great network of people who will just hand you money. But even if you raise it, it's incredibly difficult to run. So please have a clear idea of why you want to do this and really talk to yourself about that. I would say 9 times out of 10, take that same spirit and start a company or go work as somebody's number 3 employee on a rocket ship if you can find one. But if you do really want to do it for whatever reason, it's your choice. I think what you do is you don't wait for everything to be perfect because it's never going to be perfect. So you absolutely have to start with talking to founders and getting to know founders and knowing who you would invest in if you had it. And not only just knowing it and talking to founders and being that call for founders, because that's really valuable, but starting to create like a fantasy portfolio and writing deal memos, like saying, I would invest in this company because this is how it fits with my thesis. This is what I think, look up samples of deal memos and start writing them because you might find yourself in a situation where LPs, limited partners who invest in funds, you might find yourself in a situation where you can show them that work and show them how you're thinking about something. And it might even turn out that one day you get to invest in that company, maybe just a little bit later on. I also think if you can be an angel investor, become one. You don't have to be rich to be an angel investor. You can start investing as a non-accredited investor. And how many people know what an accredited investor is? Great. So an accredited investor in the U.S., and this is SEC regulations, none of us created this, it's the SEC government. But today, an accredited investor is someone who makes $200,000 or more a year, or $300,000 with their spouse, or has a net worth of $1 million, not including their main home. And then if you're not that, then you can invest in most private companies, which is a whole other story that I've been talking about for years. I don't agree with it, but it is the rule. So most people think you have to be accredited to make an investment, but you actually don't because of Reg CF, Regulation Crowd Fund. And there are other ways you can be accredited, by the way, but you can look that up. So you can invest in Regulation Crowd Fund, and we did that at Backstage. We created one. We raised $5 million in 8 days in 2021. You can raise up to $5 million in the Reg CF now, as of 2021. It's not super easy, but you can go through the process. So anyway, if you go to backstageinvest.com, we are teaching people how to invest. And part of it is a curriculum of this is how you build your thesis, this is how you start your fund, even if you can't start your fund immediately.
I want to pull back a little bit. So deal memos, forecasting, you're obviously a marketing guru, like we can see it right now. I forgot, but you don't have a college degree, correct?
Correct.
So can you talk to me about your thought process around learning and how you attain information and how you've become money over time?
Yeah, so I did really well in school when it came to like academics, not so much behavior. I spent a lot of time in the principal's office, but that's a whole other story. Very outspoken. But I got into colleges. I could have gone to college. I even got scholarship. I was on the way to that. But first of all, I just didn't like school at all, and I didn't know why 4 more years of it would be any better. I didn't quite get that. And then second of all, my family was poor, and even with the scholarship, I didn't want to leave them behind to deal with that. So I just made the decision very early that I wasn't going to go to college. I wasn't pressured to go, which was cool, even though my mother is a graduate of Dillard University, HBCU. Hey. Yes. Now we have a scholarship there, by the way. So I just knew I wasn't going to go out to college, which wasn't important to me. But I think it's really cool if you do go, and I think it's cool if you decide not to. Today, it's just like there's not a day that goes by where I don't learn something. And that you can go, I was just like on the ride over here, I was watching a YouTube video, learning something. Like you can just learn so much online. A lot of it's for free. I just think that we can learn from experiences. We can learn from just like curriculum that's now sourced online, and obviously look for the source and who it is and is it trustworthy. But there's just so much to learn. So I just think that it's more about like following your interests and almost following your obsession, and your passion, of course, rather than like, oh, what school did you go to? Because there's only one person on my team of like, in the past I've had up to 40 people. There's only one person who I know what school they went to that I can remember. It didn't matter to me when I hired them.
Interesting. I think there's many things you've overcome throughout your life. And, one thing you haven't talked about yet is you talk about in your book how you had, a little bit of a fear to speak. And yeah. I think there's probably some stat somewhere like the number 2 most feared thing is death, and number 1 is like speaking in front of a crowd, which is wild.
And 50% of people have stage fright, or so they say.
Yeah. So I'm curious. You have this amazing event in April. You'll be speaking. There's so many great speakers, from Issa Rae to Rich Paul to Sheila Johnson. How did you go from being like, have stage fright, not being able to speak, to now you're speaking all the time, you're giving talks on how to speak. In your first Million book, you have a 10-step process of how to monetize yourself as a speaker. Like, how did you go from not being a speaker and not being too scared to like where you are now?
Yeah, I was. So didn't have a little bit of stage fright. I had a lot of bit of stage fright. I was so terrified. I once hid behind a tree while I was supposed to be a host for the Colorado Spring Pride. You know, a tree has another side to it, right?
There's Arlan.
I thought I was clever, but I don't know how I got there. I don't know why I said yes, and I don't know how I got there, but it was. Oh, thank you. This is my wife, Anna.
Hey, Anna.
I'm not gonna make a joke because it won't work. Okay. So I was, had terrible stage fright. Around 2017, I had started being known a little bit in Silicon Valley, so I started getting invited to things and actually started getting awards and accolades. But you had to kind of be on stage and accept these awards to get them. And so a couple things happened. Yeah, fancy that. A couple things happened, and I mean stage fright to the point where we once had a meetup with 30 of our founders, and my job at this meetup, besides vision and starting the whole thing, was to tell them that we had T-shirts for them. I was terrified. That's how. Anybody have stage fright in here?
Yes.
You don't have to talk about it. You can just raise your hand. Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about, like that heart pounding, like I can hear myself an echo. Oh. So that's how bad it was. But that started happening. So two things happened. One is I saw someone get an award at a banquet that was supposed to be mine because I said no to I can't give the acceptance speech. So I gave it to someone else. And I was with my mom, who has gone through so much with me, beat cancer, beat all kinds of stuff. And I was just like, oh, she flew all the way out here to watch somebody else get my award. It's kind of a bummer. And the other one was that I was supposed to speak at Forbes 30 Under 30 at Faneuil Hall in Boston with Richard Branson was going to go on right after me. So I would have had an excuse. He was like one of my heroes. I would have had an excuse to talk to him. And I canceled the day before because I was so scared. So when that happened, I said, I had been reading Shonda Rhimes' The Year of Yes. Yeah. And I said, okay, in this year, the next 12 months, I'm going to say yes to 3 speaking engagements because I had been asked. And it doesn't matter. Whatever happens, I'm going to go to it. Because then everybody will leave me alone and they'll see that I can't do this or whatever, right? So I did that, and the first one I did was it went well. And I was so nervous when it started, and it was just a few people, but I was so nervous. And I sat down and I looked out and I was like, it was the whole tree all over again. I was like, how did I get here? What am I going to do? And then I looked in the audience and I just saw several black women just going, just ready to hear me. And I was like, oh, it's about them. It's not about me. Oh, boom, click. And from that moment on, yes, I still got nervous for a few months, but I was just off to the races. And now you obviously can't shut me up.
Nah.
But I do it now for the people who took, we're in LA, but the people who took the train in, the people who got babysitters, the people who are here by themselves and they just need that one word, that one thing that to click for them. And it just changes everything. And now I've spoken in front of 20,000 people is the largest audience that I've spoken in front of.
Wow.
So I know we got to wrap up pretty soon, and we'll go to Q&A. Quick question I have. Can you talk about the nuance in venture capital I alluded to it earlier about Robinhood of you have a fund, right? You need to secure money from investors, and then you need to put it into a founder, someone in here who's waiting for money from you. What is it like when somebody pulls out of your fund and kind of navigating through that?
Oh, it has happened so many times. When that article came out, a few of the LPs left that were committed in that new fund. And it's also just happened. There's a story in this book, Your First Million, where we get $5 million committed to us by a major conglomerate, Nissan, can't think of the other side of the name of it. And the only thing that's left to do is for the president of that company to fly in from Paris, sign the paperwork, and we'll take a picture.
A little PR work.
Yeah. Sorry, say again?
A little bit of PR work.
PR work, yeah. A little bit of cut the ribbon sort of thing. There are tears in the boardroom when we say yes to this. Everybody's so happy. It's $5 million. It'll change everything in operations money, not in investing. I wake up in New York. This is in San Francisco. I wake up a few days later in New York. I checked Twitter back when it wasn't just a dumpster fire of Elon's Musk. Number 3 trending is Carlos Ghosn, I can't pronounce his last name, is arrested and is now, on the run and da-da-da-da-da. So that dude, if you heard of that story, that's the guy that was supposed to sign the paperwork and take a picture with me. After he got arrested, after a few weeks, he shipped himself in a FedEx box to another country where he wouldn't be extradited. So he is now currently on the lam. And so when that happened that same day, I called up the guy that I was working with, and I was like, so, we're good? Or,
Where's that $5 mil?
And he was, he was just like, yeah, I know as much as you know. And I've never spoken to them again. Never spoken to them again. So to answer your question, it sucks. But there's always something, it always balances itself out in some way or another. I've also turned down money because it was the wrong money. It always balances itself out in one way or another. This has not been easy.
There's such a thing as wrong money?
Of course there is, yes. Okay. Oh, yes.
Come on, Kenny.
How many people know that there's such thing as bad money? And if you don't know that today, I'm so glad that today you're finding out. And I'm so serious. It's okay if you didn't know that. It makes sense, but you have to live with yourself. You have to live with consequences and with the relationships that you forge. And I know, I just told you I've been sleeping on the floor of the airport. I've been broke for more than 80% of my life. And I don't mean like cute broke, where I got to dip into some savings or go get the credit card. I had a lot of white friends growing up, and they would say, I'm broke, and then they'd find out they had like several accounts that they had to dip into. It's like, wait, you don't mean broke like I mean broke. I know what that's like, and because I pour so much back into Backstage and my other entities, I'm not like rolling in it, right? Yeah. There's still no amount of money that somebody could give to me or take from me that would make me challenge my ideals, that would make me challenge my integrity, that would make me throw somebody else under the bus to get what I need. It just doesn't exist, because if you are an entrepreneur especially, you are money. Dr. Pamela Jolly, who is a black woman who specializes in black economy and generational wealth, she was my very first podcast guest of Your First Million 4+ years ago. Yeah. She told me that black people came here on the balance sheet. We are wealth, right? And I fell out my chair, rolled a few times. I was like, but the point of it is that if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a true entrepreneur, you're going to make a way. And yes, it's difficult. And yes, it's not what you thought it was going to be. And yes, it's taking longer than you thought it was going to take. But I promise you, if you take that easy way out, you're going to regret that. You're going to regret that. And there's some things you can't roll back. There's some things you can't take back or get back. Integrity is one of those things, so there is a such thing as wrong money, and the more mistakes we make, the wiser we get, the stronger our instincts become. So it's okay if we're making mistakes. Still make mistakes all the time, but because you're building and you're building and you're evolving.
I love that. Before we go to Q&A, I have one more question for you, Arlan. Where do you see yourself 5-10 years? Where is Arlan in 2035?
35, so I'd be 55. Well, I've said this a few times. I believe I can generate $1 billion, but you won't see me have $1 billion. I don't think any one person necessarily, this is my opinion, should hold that much wealth. So I think I would have generated $1 billion by then, and it would have gone out into every corner of the earth and to catalyze other people. I would have 100%, Anna knows what I'm about to say, I would have had a starring role on General Hospital. I would be
You and Stephen A.
me and Stephen A. You'll get it.
I get it.
His name is Brick on there. I want to be called like Thorn or Chalice or something, something ridiculous. But I love it in our hospital, so that would have happened. And I would definitely have two things happening. One is I would have a tour bus that was probably purple and had a wrap, because that's what I think of as success. And I would be wearing only purple velour tracksuits for the rest of my life, and probably have a bird on my shoulder that I have trained to say certain things to certain people. Because I plan that, to me, if you see me with a purple velour tracksuit, you can consider me having made it. That it will be my way of saying that I have made it finally. But no, I think I would have. I definitely would have helped 1,000 people. To have a quest to help 1,000 people become millionaires. So I definitely would have done that by 55, so 12 years from now, because I want to do that within a decade. And I know some people in this room would be on that list if you're not already. That's a true fact, I know. And hopefully I'm happy. Yeah.
Love it, love it. Thank you. Let's give it.
Thank y'all. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to kick off Q&A. So if you have a question, please say your name and where you're from. And
Say your name. Say your name.
there you go.
This was amazing, first of all, so thank you so much for hosting this conversation. My name's Robin. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. Gang. But my question for you is, you started, I guess, in your career as a production coordinator. Well, post-porn, it was production coordinator, right?
Post-porn.
So in those early conversations, how did you prove out your expertise when your background is so non-traditional? I feel like it's oftentimes hard for creatives or creative-forward folks to raise capital or explain why they deserve to be in the room.
You mean for the fund? Like when I
Yes,
started
for
that
Backstage.
career? Oh, yeah. Everything about me was like non-traditional, I guess. And I kind of hate that term, but everything about me was just like sideways. I did what I tell founders to do, is like be so good that you're undeniable. So no, I didn't have a college degree. I didn't have a network. I didn't have anything on paper that made sense for people to give me millions of dollars. But I did spend years working with founders who are ultimately the customer of this. And working with those founders, then eventually working with investors, and not in a transactional way, but just helping them make connections. So when Susan made her first investment, and then, she felt like she could introduce me to the next person, I could say all of the things that I had done up until that point. Like when you come to me as a founder, I don't look at what school you went to or even how much, the millions you've made already, if that's the case. I look at what have you done with the resources that you have up until this point. And so that's how I looked at this, was let me give them receipts. They may be receipts that they don't quite understand, but they're going to be the equivalent, right? The experience. So when we started getting into like these investors like Stuart Butterfield and Ellen Powell and Brad Feld and all these people in tech, when they started reaching out to people, they would reach out to founders. And I had this huge network of founders that could say, yeah, she's been helping me for 3 years without any equity or anything, or any this, and that. And that made a huge, huge difference. So you can't let the lack of resources stop you from doing something. Like I said, also, I had all that information, so I could go toe-to-toe with these people. And these guys were like, how did you know all of that? Well, I've been studying, because I wasn't waiting around.
What was your quote you said in your book about Beyonce and information?
Yeah, so Beyonce says, let's get information. She's also saying, let's get information. That's what she's really saying.
Hey, Arlan.
Hey.
A few years ago, you wrote an article that it says, if you are reading this,
I see you. Yes, hi.
if you are reading this, it's not too late, which I believe was, a pivotal moment in your life too. And I wasn't mine when I read the article. You've always been one of my biggest inspiration. But now that we are also entering a pivotal era, which is the era of AI, I would love for you to say, what is your view on where we are headed to, but also what advice you would give to the people here in this room, because I feel we are in this moment. If you are here, it's not too late. And I think this is a chance we are having now to not be left out of writing the new playbooks of how things will be made. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, you're saying it. So AI, there are a few camps, and the main camps, and one of those camps is like people, BIPOC people, or BIPOC. People are sort of like, oh, I'm blissfully ignorant, or I'm afraid of it. AI, it's the robots that are going to come get us, or it's so evil. All these different things, and it does worry me because I do. Well, let me just say I'm an investor in OpenAI, and so just a caveat. But I do not think that AI on its own is evil. Like the internet is not evil on its own. It's the thing that you do with it, right? It's the people behind it. So, but at the same time, there are a lot of things to be worried about with AI. A lot of things to be worried about. Both ways, and either way, we need to be educating ourselves. We need to be understanding this, whatever way you can. Read about it, watch YouTube videos, talk to experts, talk to people, use it yourself, different ones, and understand what you're afraid of or understand what you're talking about before you make a blanket judgment on it, because this AI is learning from inputs. And if we are all too scared of it, we're not going to be represented in those inputs. And then it's going to be like a manifest destiny of the thing that we're afraid of, we're actually causing. So I would really look at it that way. I know it's taking jobs. Tyler Perry just shut down his $800 million studio because of AI. I know it's taking jobs. But there's always a what jobs will it create? What skills will it give us or help us enhance? Can we find a way to use it as a tool and stop it from being used as a weapon? That's what my advice would be.
Hi, Arlan. I'm Sam from Los Angeles. A little bit different question. Let's say there was like a zero-sum competition, a Shark Tank type of thing for you to invest in a like hot angel round or maybe Series A startup, but they could only take one investor at your scale. It would either be you or somebody like Y Combinator, right? Something like that. And maybe you're an investor in Y Combinator, I don't know, but like...
Oh, no.
Okay, good. What would you say, like, why go with you versus somebody who's more traditional or has a bigger name recognition? Like what would be your answer for why you to invest, to take on as an investor?
Yeah, I mean, this is very hypothetical because I don't audition for people. And I'm just being honest. Yeah, sure. I'm just being honest. The money is a commodity and it's easy to find. And I think any entrepreneur should look at any deal that's in front of them, any opportunity that's in front of them with a fair and balanced view. I've invested in 30 venture funds since 2018, personally. No, 30, yeah, personally. 28 of them have my mandate, and 28 of them did not exist before Backstage Capital. I definitely I'm gonna kind of skirt humility a little bit. I definitely had a major role to play in the ecosystem that we see today for Black and brown founders and for women. We can argue about what that role, the weight of that role. But when you are someone who is influencing the influencers, you are someone who the wealthiest people in the country call for advice and help. That is something that cannot be measured, quantified, or even compared. And a lot of times, like, money is fleeting. So a lot of times when you get an investment from someone, there's a long tail of the rest of the stuff. You get the money, and then that runs out in a few months, and then there's the rest of it. And if someone is concerned or interested in what the rest of it could look like, and having a high quality experience there, then they would look to Backstage Capital. But at the same time, like, I think everyone should like vote with their conscience and their heart and their mind. Yeah. So interesting question, for sure. But maybe it could always be that Y Combinator is the better bet. Now, Paul Graham, who started Y Combinator, is one of my mortal enemies, so he can suck it. But other than that, I think it's a fantastic organization.
All right, give it up for Arlan Hamilton.
Thanks, y'all.
So I want to give you a brief second to talk a little bit about your conference, and then we have a special surprise for some of the guests here as well.
Oh, cool. Okay, so Your First Million Live. I have Your First Million, the book that just came out in January. I have Your First Million, the podcast. It's been out for years. As we said, Issa Rae. We have an evening with Issa Rae, April 10th at the conference. We have Rich Paul, Sheila Johnson, the first Black woman billionaire, Gary Vaynerchuk, Dean Forbes from the UK has a billion-dollar company, and more and more. And then TLC, as we mentioned, will close out the event with a full-scale concert. I may or may not jump that stage. What about your hand? It's your stage. May or not. And then we'll just have all kinds of people during Arlan's Academy to teach and to just pour into the audience. We are expecting 2,000 to 4,000 people. We are only, I think, 5 weeks away. It's April 9th through the 12th. You go to yourfirstmillion.live to secure your ticket. If you use the code word ROOK, R-O-O-K, which is my brother's name, ROOK, R-O-O-K, you'll get a deep discount on tickets. And I would say come through. Most of you are local, so definitely come through. If nothing else, come through the evening of the 10th and all day on the 11th, because it's going to be very special. We also, I can't say who it is, but we just secured a major network streaming 10-episode special based around the event. It's really, really shaping up to be something very, very special. And I want you all to be there for the first. I'm also going to be debuting my Stealth beverage brand at the event. You all are getting a lot of the tea, because I've had the tea. And it's just going to be really, really special. And the big picture is that over the next decade, I want to help create and catalyze 1,000 millionaires. At each event, this will be a 10-year event, at each event, we will showcase the people who have made that. So we'll be tracking it, and then they'll be able to walk the stage like a graduation. And you'll learn more in the book if you pick it up, why a million and why your first million and why that's important as a group. Yeah.
That's amazing. We're trying to be on that list. Thank you so much, Arlan.
yourfirstmillion.live. I don't want anybody in this room texting me the night before, hey, can I come through? I'm telling you right now how it's going to work. It's going to sell out. Get your tickets. Rook, like on a chessboard, Rook, R-O-O-K. look at checkout of any of the ones that haven't sold out, because one is sold out.
Thank you, Arlan. Give it up. Give it up.
Thank y'all. Oh, can I say one more thing? One more thing I forgot to say. I mentioned BackstageInvest.com earlier. You get a $1,000 voucher when you sign up to Backstage Invest. So it's like a super hack, because you get $1,000. It costs $1,000, and you get a $1,000 voucher. So if you're thinking of going to the event, get that so you can have both. BackstageInvest.com, as you were.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we're actually going to give out a few signed copies from Arlan. Austin over here has got a little generator. He thinks he's a tech guy, so we're going to see if he actually makes it work. But the first one we're going to give out actually is to Robin, not because she's from Brooklyn. I'm from Brooklyn as well. Crown Heights, you know what I'm saying? But thank you for being the first to ask a question.
Hey.
Yeah, Robin.
Yeah.
All right, so the first person on this really, really great algorithm that I built on Excel is Adeja. Is she here? Okay. Run it again. Sam Viotti? No, not here. Oh, wow, y'all gotta...
What are the odds? I mean, there are a lot of people in this room.
Aaliyah Brown?
Hey.
Yeah!
Yes.
All right, so we're giving away one more. That's you guys. When you sign up, you got to show up. Hamid Dash.
Bueller.
Conrad. Conrad's not here. Juanita Leveroni. Laura Rodriguez. Oh, man.
I didn't want it.
Cindy.
Brandon Hoffman.
At some point, this is going to get insulting.
Yep. Josh Gomez.
It's like he graduated.
Algorithm is janky. Don't invest in it. Nah, it's all good. Arlan, again, thank you so much for taking the time for being here this evening. Follow Arlan at Arlan Was Here on IG. Follow us on Breaking Bread Production. Thank you guys so much for taking the time for being here this evening. It's been a blessing. Don't break that shade, fam. We got paid for that. Thank you. We'll have another one of these events next month, but follow us on IG and you'll see who comes up next. But thank y'all. Give it up.
Appreciate y'all.